nonprofit organization, and I've been elected president of Durant Park. And I have a story to tell you tonight. We're going to cover 161 years of history about a piece of property in downtown Lansing that's known as Durant Park. Durant Park is located north of Lansing Community College and bounded by Saginaw, Capitol, Washington, and Madison Streets. The park covers a city block or 3 acres of land and is at the highest point between the downtown business district and North Lansing, and crowns a sort of knoll that dominates the entire surrounding landscape. In order to document the history of Durant Park, we need to begin with the land, long before it became a park. The real estate history of the land goes back to 1839, according to records in the Brooks Abstract Company. In that year, Frederick Bushnell and Charles M. Lee claimed the property for James Seymour. James Seymour was the leader in the founding of the city, Michigan. The land was laid out as Block 54 of the town of Michigan, which later became Lansing. There were 10 city lots on the property. 11 years after the first white settler came to Lansing Township, the first picnic ever held in Ingham County was held on the spot that is now Durant Park. On July 4th, 1848, several rowboat loads of young people were cruising up and down the river looking for a picnic spot. A broken trail that was to become Washington Avenue led to Durant Park. Between the years 1847 and 1880, a group of pioneer businessmen and merchants began building spacious homes on North Washington Avenue, on the first land cleared from the primeval forest. They actually competed with each other to see who could build the most spacious home, and most of those homes are still standing today. In 1850, Mortimer Cowles, a prominent store owner in North Lansing, systematically began to purchase the block on Washington Avenue between Saginaw and Madison to build a large home for his family. At that time, his family consisted of himself, his wife, and 3 daughters. The Cowles mansion was built of brick in the Southern style of architecture with a cupola on the roof. There was also a carriage house on the property that is located at approximately where the playground equipment is now. Cowles died in 1910, and soon after, his spinster daughters, Lizzie and Lucy, decided to move out of the mansion because they didn't want to live alone in such a secluded place. By this time, the 15-foot evergreen hedge that surrounded the property was neglected, and the whole place was overrun with vines and shrubs, and the trees grew wild. And it was known throughout the city at that time as a haunted area.
Mm-hmm.
The Cowles property made the newspaper often with outrage at the appearance of the property. People were very upset. Its only use was as a buffer against wind. Thieves hid items in the underbrush. A ruffian the paper called Jack the Hugger would grab women around the waist as they walked in the dark, and couples were often seen sneaking into the bushes. In August 1910, there were articles in the newspaper about a big snake in the Cowles hedge that was 12 feet long and 4 inches in diameter, and was of a size to rob hen roosts and carry away small children. Search parties were organized. The police asked for a snake charmer to lure the snake from its hiding place. But the snake was never found, and finally the Cowles daughters put a notice in the paper that said there never was a snake in the bushes, and if people trespassed on the property, they'd be arrested. Nothing had been done to the property in all these years. By November 1911, there was such outrage at the appearance of the property that the city council scheduled a special election to either buy the property for $40,000 or take it by condemnation. Lucy and Lizzie wanted the property named Cowles Park, but the city refused. stating that by receiving payment, the sisters gave up all rights to the property. The purchase of the Cowles property was defeated by people in the outlying areas who only wanted more pavements. 5 years later, nothing had been done to the property. 5 years later, in October 1916, there was an open hearing to again purchase the Cowles property. The city offered $60,000. By this time, the property was in even worse shape, but the sisters held out for $80,000. But they finally agreed to sell it for $70,000. This was back and forth. By early June of 1917, there were articles in the paper every day urging voters to purchase this property. There were emotional pleas such as, if the city should stop growing, which nobody believes will happen, it would cost only $2.40 for $1,000 of assessment, and this amount distributed over 20 years would only amount to 12 cents a year. On June 12, 1917, 2 days before the vote, there was another emotional plea in the newspaper. Lansing people have been walking or riding past the place daily, or shivering past its gloom at night and saying, what a pity the city didn't buy it for a park. This has been true of the working men of the north side whose little families have had to trudge a long, dusty way to some distant park, or stay in their own little yards on sultry summer Sundays. Voting day, June 14th, 1917. The vote fails again. People wanted pavements and a fire station more than a park. At that time, the country was at war. Coal cost $20 a ton. The price of potatoes was high, and Lansing voters did not want to bond themselves, even if it only cost pennies over a long period of time. An interesting sidelight to that election was that every woman in the 4th Ward who registered cast her ballot, and 200 voted in the last 35 minutes before the polls closed. Yay. In mid-July of 1920, William C. Durant arrived in Lansing on an inspection tour of his new plant. While touring the city with C.P. Downey, a relative of his, they passed by the coal site. Durant asked if the property was for sale and was informed the city recently rejected an offer to buy it for $80,000. He made a comment that it would make a nice park and asked Downey to open negotiations to buy it. Gottlieb Rudder was the real estate agent that had to acquire the lots the sisters had sold to individuals. And this was not an easy thing to do. This was prime real estate property, and these people bought these lots and they wanted them. So you had quite a bit of work to do quickly. A few days later, Durant quietly paid the Cowles sisters $100,000 in cash for the property. It was noted in the newspaper that the sisters wanted their money in cold cash, not wishing to bother with certified checks or other paper. Edward Verlinden, general manager of Durant's new plant, was assigned the task of overseeing the transformation of the property. The H.G. Chrisman Company was given the contract to make improvements, which consumed the remainder of 1920 and cost approximately $50,000. Very little information was released to the public regarding the work being done, and Durant remained silent. He would not discuss what his plans were. I'll give you a little background on Durant at this point in his life. He was at the peak of his prosperity and worth over $98 million in 1920. He had twice lost control of General Motors, the company that he founded, and had formed the Durant Motor Company. At this time, there were factories in Elizabeth, New Jersey, Long Island, New York, Oakland, California, Muncie, Indiana, Flint, Michigan, and Leaside, Ontario. On March 21st, 1921, Durant's attorney, Edmund Shield, appeared before the Lansing City Council to officially turn it over the deed to the property on behalf of William C. Durant. A request was made and approved to name the park Durant Park. Dedication ceremonies were held, and Lansing's Mayor Benjamin Keyes praised Durant for his contribution to the city. Durant did not attend the ceremony. Although the property was given with no strings attached, it is interesting to note that only 3 months after the park was donated to the city, headlines in the Lansing State Journal proclaimed, "City cooperates at Durant Park," or at Durant Plant. The story went on to explain that sewer construction will be started and Saginaw Street will be paved to the new Durant Motors plant. It would appear that Durant had found an easy system to cut through red tape that is usually involved with these municipal projects. With a salesman. To thank Durant for the gift of the park, the city voted in June of 1923 to erect a stone arch at the corner of Washington and Saginaw, bearing the name Durant Park. The arch would be constructed by the Christman Company of Select Bedford Cut Stone at a cost of $7,200. Money was privately raised to pay for the arch. The arch was completed in 1924, and Durant sent the following letter to the mayor. I'll read a portion of the letter that Durant sent. February 13th, 1924. I am glad that the pleasure in this matter is not all mine. It made me personally very happy to show my interest in the people of Lansing by the bequest of this park. I hope that through many years to come, its restfulness and beauty may give them happiness and balance. And I accept the tender of the arch with reciprocal appreciation for the honor thereby bestowed. The park was well maintained for many decades. In the center area, there was an open bowl 40 feet in diameter. It was designed for a fountain, but that part of Durant's park was never completed. Although children were not allowed to play in Durant Park at that time, some adventurous youngsters would ride their bicycles around the inside of the cement bowl. Eventually, the bowl was filled in and planted with tall red canvas each year. From the 1920s and into the 1960s, each city park had its own gardener, and they competed with each other on beautification projects. For about the last 25 years, budget cuts, staff downsizing, and shifting priorities throughout city government have resulted in reduced maintenance in city parks, and flower planting is mainly left to volunteers at this time. By 1996, young families in the neighborhood wanted more play opportunities for their children. The 2 playground pieces in the park were deteriorated, rusty, and unsafe by certain current standards. The Project Play program was developed throughout the city, and Durant Park was able to qualify for $35,000 in play equipment. The group continued their interest in the park and decided in 1998 to formally organize into a nonprofit corporation called Friends of Durant Park, with the goal of raising money for improvements to Durant Park. At present, the Friends of Durant Park are concerned with the condition of the memorial arch. As I said earlier, the arch cost $7,200 to build. Now it may need $30,000 worth of repairs. While we continue to meet monthly and develop restoration plans for the park, we are also collecting stories and memories of people who once lived in the neighborhood surrounding Durant Park, or from their relatives with plans to publish a book. I would like to talk to anybody about your recollections and memories. You can call me, Joan Sheldon, 485-4225.
Trying to say that again.
My phone number
Yeah.
is 485-4225. Thank everybody very much for coming tonight. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Stephanie.
Joan, could you share a little bit of some of the stories of people you've been talking to, the kinds of information you're able to gather?
I talked to a man, 96 years old. He mainly worked at Rio in motor wheel, but he knew Durant, and he told me the story that Durant tried to buy property inside the city to build his factory, but Ari Old would not allow him to do that. I think Old was afraid that Durant would pay workers more money. They were getting 50 cents an hour, and Durant would be paying more than 50 cents an hour. So he forbid Durant to purchase any land within the city limits. So Durant went outside the city and built his factory on about 740 acres on Berlinden, just outside the city at that time. That's one of the stories. Any more questions? Ellen?
Joan, we've mentioned that it was estimated that the arch needed about $30,000 worth of repairs. How is it that the Friends of Durant Park have been able to determine this, and are there plans to do work in the rest of the park beyond the arch?
We determined the condition of the arch by contacting Schiffer Masonry in Mason, Michigan. They're known throughout the world as experts in masonry work. And there's leakage at the base of the arch. There's damage to the pillars on the wings. The urns that were on the arch have been destroyed. Those need to be replaced. The sign that says Durant Park is a painted sign covering up glass letters that are mounted in copper. So those have to be restored. The arch was sandblasted in 1988, and there was severe damage, and chips are out of the arch. There's just a lot of work that needs to be done. Anyone else have any more questions?
Are there any plans for any additional landscaping in the park?
We need more landscaping. Eventually, we'd like to put the fountain in the center, but in the meantime, we're working with Michigan State University graduate student who does the flowers at the Capitol, and she's going to develop a landscape plan for the center area, and we hope to plant that this year. Have it be perennial so it'll be easier to keep up. We have volunteers that come in a couple times a year and help us with edging and raking. There's just not enough city staff people to do this work.
Is the grad student working on her own or under anybody at MSU?
She's working under Professor Miriam Rutz of the Architectural Landscape Department. Ms. Rutz is a well-known professor, noted throughout the world for her architectural and landscape historical preservation work. Any questions?
You live right nearby, right?
I live
Yeah.
2 blocks from Durant Park.
Oh, you live 2 blocks.
Yes, I live 2 blocks from Durant Park. It's a neighborhood park. We believe that by restoring the park to its original condition, that would be the catalyst for improving housing and living in the neighborhood. That's kind of our goal, and that's how we started out. And it's been found to be true throughout the United States that if the park is improved, that it improves the living conditions that surround the park. So that's what we're trying to do at this time. Stephanie?
It sounds like you consider this park to be a historic park. Are there other historic parks in the general vicinity of Lansing?
I think all the downtown parks are historic, Stephanie. Rudder Park, Ferris Park, Durant, and then Wentworth are the parks that we're most interested in.
Probably roughly equally as threatened, but it doesn't have a caretaking organization such as Friends of Durant Park.
That's right. I've been asked to help form organizations for Rudder, and Downtown Neighborhood Association is interested in Ferris Park. So it does take an organization to bring attention to these parks and give additional maintenance.
How many in your organization?
We have a 7-member board, and we have approximately 55 members.
Oh, great.
Perhaps after tonight, you'll have some more.
That would be welcome, yes.
I was wondering about the garden clubs. Is there a garden club in that area? Is there a garden club that could be involved in the park?
I'd love to have a garden club involved in our park. It'd be wonderful. We have not developed our planting plan to the point yet, but we would like to have garden clubs involved.
A lot of the garden clubs have, certified, qualified gardeners, planters, landscape people.
Well, I'd certainly like to talk to them about that. No question about that. Any more questions?
Thank you, Joan. That was really wonderful. Appreciate it. That's great. I'll get a few of these people.
And in other people.
This is a display that was put together by Joan Sheldon and the Durant Park Historical Group. Here's a picture of the park in 1920. Here's a picture of the Durant Park in 1988 when the Durant Auto Club came to visit. The arch is constructed of select Bedford cut stone and was designed and erected by H.G. Chrisman Company at the cost of $7,200.